Hello, I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm so excited about my guest today because I have literally known her since we were in the womb together. My twin sister, Rebekah Anderson, is here with us today, and I'm so excited. But the reason that I have her on is because she and I just went on a absolutely life-changing trip to Africa together. And so I wanted to interview her on how, her experience, her feelings on this. And it was so life-changing for both of us that we just wanted to share some of this experience. And so Rebekah, who really is known as Becca to everybody, it's just me that calls her by all the other variations of her name. But anyway, Becca Anderson, it's so good to have you here.
I am so excited to be here. So thank you so much for asking me to do this because I think we did have such a life-changing trip. I want to tell everybody about it, and this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, it's so true. So we went to Tanzania. It actually fell into our lap very unexpectedly. So I'm going to tell
Mhm.
you really quick how it fell into our lap, and then kind of get into asking Rebekah some questions about it. So we had been at If Gathering. Jenny Allen is an amazing woman, and she puts on something called If Gathering every year. Many have heard of it. And it happened to be in Fort Worth. And at that, it was a 10-year anniversary one. So it was massive, way bigger than it normally is. First one I had ever been to. And so I just thought this was how it was. Well, they have these huge jumbotrons and, these big, big screens. And at one point during this meeting, during this get together, um, they had a band down on stage, and that band was singing a song. And I wish I could remember the song. I can't. But they were singing a song, and we were all singing it, kind of like from heart. We all knew the words. And then all of a sudden, up on the screen, they started showing different countries singing the exact same song along with us at the exact same time. It's really, really hard for me to even think back to this without getting emotional and choked up because it impacted me so deeply. So they show that they're singing with us in English at the exact same time as us. Like they had it timed perfectly. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, this is just incredible. Like people around the world, we are singing together at the exact same time. And it was so powerful. Then, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, the guy down on stage continues to play music, but the words stop. And up on the screen, the different countries like Romania, Japan, like I'm trying to remember the different countries that were up there. They started going to these different places and showing them, and they started singing in their native languages. I'm like trying not to cry right now because it impacted me so deeply. They were singing in their heart languages. And the reason that it impacted me so deeply was because I realized in that moment that by accident, I didn't mean to, but I just pictured God speaking English. I thought, oh, he speaks English. This is the language that I speak, and this is how I talk to him, and this is what he understands. But then I realized that he actually understands every single language perfectly, and that he loves every single language and every single tribe and country and nation equally, not just me singing and praying in English. And I just was floored. And so that was the moment right then that he planted a seed in my heart to do something outside the borders of the United States. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with this. Like, I don't even know what to do with this thought, with this feeling. I had no clue. But at that moment, like he had things in the works that I didn't know about. And within 72 hours, I got a call from a friend of ours, a friend of mine in an organization called Compassion International. And she said, Rachel, there is a trip. I had told, oh, anyway, she said, there's a trip and I think you need to hear about it. It's going to Africa. You will go to Africa and you're going to be in Tanzania on the ground. And seeing what Compassion is doing in Tanzania. And then you're going to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. And I could not stop crying. I literally was in the car driving to go have lunch with my husband, and I was bawling my eyes out. Don't know why. Don't know why. I just like couldn't cry. And I think it's because I knew the Holy Spirit had put it in my heart to do this. And then, like, literally so fast before I could screw it up, before I could forget about it, before any of that, he brought this opportunity into my life. So little did I know that on the other side of the phone, Rebekah, and Lori said, I want you to do this with your sister. And I call Rebekah. So little did I know, and I'll let her tell her story about what was happening on her side. But that's how this started. And so we knew from the very beginning that this was absolutely supposed to happen. Like, we knew unequivocally. So Rebekah, you go into what was going on your side.
Yeah. And I had been with you at that If gathering, and it was something about hearing all of those native tongues sing the same song. It was like life changing. Um, for me, what had been happening, I had been asked that last year, in the fall and spring, to teach at our women's Bible study at our church. And I've taught like a little bit here and there, but this was like, hundreds of women and multiple times of speaking. And it was something I'd never done before and felt so stretched in so many ways. And so I get done with it. And I had spoken for my last time, and I prayed. I was like, God, this was I grew spiritually so much. This was amazing. Give me opportunities to say yes again to things that will stretch me. The next morning, I get a call from my daughter's fourth grade teacher, and she says, Hey, would you mind leading a devotional on the kids' overnight field trip? And I was like, Lord, you heard my prayer. I am going to go speak to these fourth graders. And look, I have an opportunity to say yes to something. You know, little did I know, 2 days later, so it was like, whatever the timing was, I get a call from Rachel asking me if I want to go on this trip. And I was like, oh, okay, Lord, this is like the big thing that you're stretching me to say yes. And so I didn't even hesitate. I think I said yes and then called my husband, Jeff. I was like, oh, it's going to be great. He's going to be great with it. And he was, but there was no hesitation because I had so specifically prayed. And I kind of feel like God didn't give me any time to lose kind of that courage that he had given me and just that resolve to continue stretching myself in my faith and just in my walk with him.
Oh, I'll screw it up. If he
Yeah.
gives me any time at all,
Oh, yeah.
I would screw it up. So that was such a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, truly.
So we started training. I mean, we started training and we were like, well, okay. I mean, the Tanzania part is going to be life-changing and that's going to be amazing. And then also we also need to prepare for this hike up Mount Kilimanjaro, which we will talk about in a different episode. But when we got there, so we had about 4 months to prepare. Yeah. So 4 months to prepare mentally, emotionally, physically, all the things. So we get to Tanzania tell me about your prep process. Like, I don't know, were you?
Yeah. Well, and we have sponsored children in compassion for 4 years. So I knew about compassion, but I didn't know much. I just knew that we were sponsoring 2 children, and every month our dollars would go and, we would get update letters and things like that. But I knew it was an amazing organization. And so I was excited to go learn more and see what they do. I didn't have any idea what I was going to learn and how it was going to change my life, but I immediately felt like excited about that aspect of the trip. I did feel a little bit anxious about the Kilimanjaro part. Rachel and I are both like,
so weird. Why?
I know. I don't know why. Yeah. We got a certificate and it says the tallest freestanding mountain in the world. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that when I agreed to this trip. I mean, there were so many things, but Rachel and I both are very active. We work out very consistently and things like that. But this is something bigger than either of us had ever done. So I started doing, taking Rachel's advice on some things and then getting my own, started doing these weighted walks and wearing this weighted vest, and it's 1,000 degrees here. I'm in Austin, Texas, and it's like 1,000 degrees. But, I just started doing it like really consistently. And we had the benefit of some hikes that I
So
could
and
do
I don't know
close
about
by.
you, because yeah, but during that time, because really it's like the Kilimanjaro part was a totally
Hmm.
separate experience.
Totally.
During my weighted walks, my
Mhm.
weighted backpack walks, what I started doing was listening to, I mean, I'm always listening to books. I'm
Mhm.
always listening to podcasts. I'm always listening to something because I walk all the time. And I think that I started to prepare my heart as much as I could. You don't
Mhm.
know what you're walking into, but that was like the prep for me on the Tanzania side
Mhm.
was really starting to like pour in during that time.
And that's the thing on these walks, I'm alone. 99% of the time I was alone. And it was such a sweet time. Either the Lord would lead me to scripture or a podcast to listen to or books or something. And it was such a sweet time because it's like I had a purpose for those walks and the purpose was this trip. And so it was such a sweet time with the Lord of just him preparing me in ways that I could not even fathom, but just this preparation of my heart for him to do big things. And I didn't know what it was going to look like. And that's what I kept praying, like, just show me, let me have a heart that's open and ready to see what you're going to do with this trip.
Yep. Yeah. And it seemed just so it was so cloudy for me because I couldn't because you and I have never been to Africa. We've never done this before. And so it reminds me of a study that I did in Habakkuk. And I know that I've told you this a million times, but um anytime something feels cloudy and uncertain in the future, and I'm like, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to feel like. I don't know what I'm walking into. I remember this study that I did in Habakkuk, and it basically, this woman was talking about Jonah, God calling Jonah to Nineveh and him saying, no, no, no. And he ran away, right? And so we all know the infamous story of Jonah getting swallowed by the whale. Well, in this study, what she talked about is how instead of God giving us all the answers up front, what he does instead is he raises the curtain 1 inch at a time. Because if he gave us all the answers, one of two things would happen, or both. We would say, no chance, I'm running for the hills, just like Jonah, right? Run away as fast as you can. Or the second thing is you would say, oh, I got this. I don't need you,
Mhm.
God. I got this. I have this under control. And so instead of God giving us the ability to do that, he forces us to rely on him as he raises the curtain 1 inch at a time. So as we were getting closer with every Zoom call, with everything, it's like I feel like he was raising the curtain 1 inch at a time so that I stayed reliant on him the whole time. Um,
100%. And I feel like because it was just 1 inch, it's like, I feel like you and I both kind of talked about how we would just take it one step at a time, whether it be something we needed to buy for the hike, whether it was, the gifts that we were getting to take to the kids, whatever it was just like, it never felt, it's like God just prepared us one step at a time. I never felt overwhelmed. I never felt like I couldn't do it, or I don't know. It was just the craziest thing how just one step at a time, he showed us exactly where to go and what to do.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, which is really kind of like how he works in life in
Yeah,
general. I
100%.
never feel equipped and ready to take on any new challenge. I always think like, no, this is crazy. Why am I doing this? And then
Mhm.
he paves the way. So let's talk about when we first arrived. W- what was your reaction to arriving in Africa? What did you think right away? Never
Yeah.
having stepped foot on that continent before.
Mhm.
What was your first impression?
Yeah, I honestly didn't know what to expect. We connected in Amsterdam, and so we got on this, we were on this giant plane. So when we get on this plane, I'm picturing the airport that we're going to land in is going to be a big airport because it has to be able to handle this giant airplane that we are on. That is not the case. And so we landed, it's a very small airport. I think there's what, two or three gates, something like that. You
Not
know,
like that. It's tiny.
they bring the ladder up, the steps up, and we come down, and it was night, it was late, it was like 7:30 maybe in the evening. And I just remember being like, okay, well, it was colder than I expected, which was a gift, such a gift that we anticipated it being hot and humid and all the things, and it was the like perfect cold. They were in their winter, and it was just lovely. And then we had to go through customs, and it felt like super overwhelming. and just so different. It was so different. It was hot in the building when we were waiting. And I don't know, it just felt a little bit, it just felt so, it felt like us like 50 years ago, kind of in that area. It was so small and just, it was a completely different experience than anything I had experienced before. And so we
Yeah.
walk out and
Well, no, I just remember, like, I
yeah.
forgot until you were just describing it, but we took all of the gifts for the kids because
Mhm.
they told us, hey, you can bring gifts. And Rebecca and I were like, oh, heck yes. So we literally packed an entire suitcase each of gifts to take to the children at these site
Giant suitcase, the biggest
giant
suitcases we own.
like huge. And we were ordering stuff on Amazon and we would get it and we'd be like, this is way too heavy. So then we'd send it back and we'd like try to come up with other gifts. Anyway, it was hilarious. They pulled our bags off to the side and they were like, what is this stuff? They were like, who is this for? What is this? And we were like, we're giving it to kids. We don't know. Like, we don't know. It was like squishies and crayons and coloring books,
Yeah.
bubbles, like all sorts of stuff. It was so funny. But anyway, yeah, that's what I remember being kind of scared and being like, oh my gosh, are they going to take us to a prison? We just brought gifts for the kids. Yeah.
Well, right before we got off the plane, the the people from the airline said, just in passing, it is illegal to bring plastic bags into the country of Tanzania. And so then when we get pulled over to the side, we hadn't unpacked any of the things. Everything's still in like the bags that it came in. And I was like, well, we broke the law because of all these plastic bags, and we are about to go to a Tanzanian prison. So this is a great start to our trip. It was so funny, just the thoughts going through your head. So anyways,
I know.
luckily we were fine.
Yeah. So we went to we went and we got on a bus after a very long wait. We finally got on a bus and we started driving.
It's a big blue van, and it took us around the whole trip. And so it was crazy because it's this van, and they threw all of our luggage up top. And it's kind of like when I think of like a safari, you know, like just like this
Mhm.
big luggage rack up top. Yeah, and it was dark, so we really couldn't see much.
No, not at
Mhm.
all. Some of the stuff that we could see when we would pass like a little village or whatever was, and it was a long bus ride, a
Mhm.
long van ride. I just remember being like, oh my gosh, like it was crazy. And it was definitely the areas that we were driving through seemed very poverty stricken. It was very
Mhm.
dark. I it was just so out of my element,
Mhm.
living in my just little Texas bubble. It was so
Mhm.
out of my element. So we get there, we get checked in, we go to bed, and there's mosquito nets all around. We were like, are we going to get malaria? Because that's like a real thing. And so we were like, okay, there's mosquito nets. It seems like it's winter here. So do we need the mosquito nets around our bed? And I mean,
Mhm.
everything was just so foreign to us.
Mhm.
So they
Yeah.
wake us up the next morning. We got in late and they wake us up the next morning and they're like, listen, your clock's going to be off. You're not going to know what time anything is, but they wake us up. We had to be ready to go by 7:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. And it was crazy because we were exhausted because it was 24 hours of flying to get there. Everything is screwed up. It's 8 hours later in Tanzania than it was at home. It was crazy. And so yeah, we got up and we had to be ready to go breakfast, everything by 7:30. And we did it. But you were just kind of in a daze, like, okay, I'm just same thing, one foot in front of the other, one step at a time to
Yeah.
go on this first site visit.
And they said the first site visit. So Mary, who's she's the woman, describe her position. Mary was like our guide.
So Mary works for the local, the Tanzanian Compassion Office. So the main, there's one headquarters in Tanzania for the compassion, work that's done there. And so she's from there. She's kind of our liaison. She organized the trip, the site visits, and she was a translator also for all of it. But she was very clearly in charge. She was amazing. You didn't
Yeah,
mess with
she was
Mary.
absolutely amazing. Like Mary did not mess around, but she was also so warm and so
So
sweet.
wonderful.
So I just remember, and really they had mentioned this to us before, but basically anything, the Tanzanians just run on their own clock. They might tell you, oh, I think it's about an hour, and it might be 4 hours. Like you
Mhm.
do not know. You don't know. And so they told us, I think they said like it'll be about an hour and a half bus ride. And then we get going, and about an hour and a half in, Mary's like, oh, I was wrong. I think it's gonna be more like 2.5 or
Yeah.
3 or something like that. It took forever. But we finally arrived.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that was so sweet, like long. And again, I think we all dozed off. Like we were all
Mhm.
just, anyway. Yeah. So we arrive, and what was your impression of our first site visit?
We had friends over for dinner last night, and like, elderly old people on these amazing trips, we threw the pictures up on the TV. And so I got to watch this video last night. And so we pull up and we are in the middle of nowhere. And so we are visiting a site, a church in this Maasai part of the Maasai tribe. And it was a Saturday. And so driving in, there was several markets that we passed. And so there were tons of people everywhere. And kind of as we got closer to the site, it got a little bit more primitive, I felt like, and just um not much, no, not very many structures and things like that. And it just became very clear we were getting farther and farther out. And so we pull up to this site, and there were three buildings. And um, well, you use that term loosely because it was, sorry, there was cinder block buildings. Um, and there were windows, but there was no glass in these buildings. And it was like, okay, just kind of watching. And as we pull up, you start looking, and all these kids start running out of these buildings. And they were all in these green tracksuits,
Adidas tracksuit,
Adidas.
and they look
They were so cute, so cute. And they all different ages of kids, all different heights and sizes and all that. And so they start running out, and the van parks, we get out, and the first thing I noticed is how cold it was. It was cold. We had gone, even farther kind of into the mountains, and I was like, oh, it is really chilly.
Mhm.
And then it was crazy because they were very unsure of us at first and just like looking at us. And then slowly they got closer and closer and closer. And it was so sweet. It was just so sweet. And they, just watching these kids watch us was, I don't know, just the awe in their eyes and the wonder about like who these people are, and our hair, our skin color, the clothes we had on, just all the things. And it was sweet because I would start to feel people just like kind of touch my arm and touch my skin. Like, okay, she looks different from me. Does she feel the same as me? And then slowly I had like hands in each of my hands, and they were holding my hands. And it didn't take long. It didn't take long at all. And it was just so sweet. And so remind me, they started singing for us, right?
Yeah, they
Yes.
did. They had a
Yeah.
song for us. So we were all just kind of standing there. And I have a video where we pulled up and we were standing there. We grabbed jackets on a whim on our way
Mhm.
out. Thank goodness, because it was freezing. And we pull up, and I've got a video, and it's, I think, my favorite video of the whole trip. And it's the children running from the building farthest away, sprinting over to come and greet us. And it was just like this sea of beautiful little children in their green Adidas tracksuits. Like they
Mhm.
just look so precious, and they just were, it was so cute. So yeah, they did. They had a song and a dance, and we had amazing interpreters, and just sold out believers, like people
Mhm.
who genuinely just love these children and love the Lord and are trying to make a difference in their lives, and
Mhm.
um, locals,
Yes. And what I didn't understand either before is any site that compassion that we go with, that compassion has, is partnered with a church. And so there's three kind of foundations within compassion that they have built everything on. And one is Christ centered first, and then church church driven. And
Yep.
so they always partner with a church wherever. And so any of the sites that we visited, it was always at a church. And there's always a project leader who's kind of in charge of everything at these churches. And
Hmm.
so he was there, and that was interesting to just kind of hear from him. And they gave a message first, and it was so, just so sweet. We had our translators there. Everything's in Swahili. And so we have a translator there. And that was interesting too, because the time frame of everything took longer because you had to have somebody translating. And so Rachel knows me. I'm always like very structured with time. Like time is like, I am very bound by time, which is so bad. And I'm trying to get better. But I just kept thinking, wow, this is taking forever. Like, are we going to stay on schedule? And very quickly I had to just like forget about it and just be like, okay, just sit in it, enjoy it. I'm not in charge of the schedule. It's fine. They're going to translate and
Yeah,
it's going to take
the
forever.
schedule was there was no schedule.
There
Like
was no schedule.
there
Yeah.
was like literally just you better just shed that
Yeah.
right away because there was no schedule. It was pretty
Yeah.
funny.
So then we got to go. I loved, they broke us up into a few groups and we got to go. There was 3 different ages of kids that when you're sponsored by Compassion, on Saturdays, you go to the church and there is a curriculum that Compassion has put together that they follow. And it is to teach these kids about the Lord. And it's from memorizing scripture to answering questions about the Bible, all these different things. So we got to go sit in on these classrooms. And it was broken down from these older kids from, really middle school and up, and then upper grammar school and lower grammar school. And so they took us around and we got to go watch in each class. And that was so sweet because they were reciting scripture in Swahili.
Mhm.
And I don't know, it was just so interesting to hear it translated and kind of like that moment you had at If Gathering. I just felt overwhelmed and I cried so many times on this trip, multiple times a day. I could cry now thinking about it, but just hearing this word of God that I've heard my entire life, hearing these scriptures spoken in Swahili was overwhelming for me. They would sing songs, same thing. It was like these, just to hear them praising the Lord, crying out to the Lord in Swahili was just, it was absolutely life changing for me. Just, it connected in my mind. It's like our hearts as believers, it connected it in a way that I had never done before. They love the Lord the same way that I love the Lord. It just is spoken in a different language, but this love that we have is the same. It was amazing.
Mm. It was so amazing. And I want to fast forward. So the second, I believe the third classroom that we went in, the
Hmm.
third
Yeah.
building,
Hmm.
there were cutouts for windows, but not actual windows, right? So just like
No glass.
squares in the wall. So I think for like airflow, maybe in the hotter months, especially, but in the winter months, it's cold and that wind
Hmm.
was brutal. And we
Hmm.
were standing there shivering and we had on layers.
Hmm.
So what happened in that building to you?
So we go into this third classroom and we're standing at the back. And there's probably, I don't know, 5 rows, and it's these benches with desks, and these kids are sitting there, and it was so sweet. And right in front of me, where I was standing, I looked down, and every other child there has on their Adidas track jacket, with a t-shirt underneath. And I look down, and right in front of me is this little boy, and he's in a short sleeve shirt and no jacket. And I'm like, oh my, he has to be freezing. And then he gets called on to answer a question. And he answers the question, and you can hear kind of the shivering in his voice. He was so cold. And I'm sitting there, and I'm sure part of it is just my mama's heart. I have kids, and I thought, oh my gosh, this little boy is freezing. And he was probably 6 or 7, I would say. And it was one of those moments I will never forget. The Lord so clearly said to me, give him your sweatshirt, give him your sweatshirt. And I was like, is that allowed? Like, I was like, Lord, wait, really? And then I said, heard him. He said, give him your sweatshirt right now. And so I looked at Mary, who was with us, and I said, Mary, can I give him my sweatshirt? And she said, hold on, let me ask. And so she very, like, kind of slowly goes up to the front. In that moment, though, she didn't wait, she didn't hesitate, goes up to this teacher who's leading the kids and asks him if I can give him the sweatshirt. And he said, yes. He gives me like kind of a thumbs up. And I was like, okay. And oh, it just like kills me when I think about it. I took my sweatshirt off. And while it was still warm, I was able to put it on this little boy. And he like looked up at me and he puts his arms in. Of course, it's like way too big for him. And he just looked at me with like this, like, just wonder in his eyes and just this look on his face. And he said, thank you in English, kind of mouthed it to me. And I just felt overwhelmed in that moment and just cried, quietly cried at the back of the room because I thought, he would be sitting here freezing to death. I mean, it was not 30 degrees. It was hot. It was in the 50s. It was in the 50s, but something about that cinder block room, the room was so cold. And so I'll just fast forward a tiny bit. We leave this site to go do a home visit and we come back to this site. And when I came back, he came running into my arms. And he just wrapped his arms around me and thanked me and said, thank you, thank you. It was the only words he could say to me. He doesn't know much English. If, that could have been the only thing he knew. And he just said, thank you, and just gave me the biggest hug. And then later it warmed up a little bit in the afternoon and he was playing soccer. And I look over and he had taken the sweatshirt off and had it balled up in his arm. And he would never, the whole time we were there, he never put my sweatshirt down. And he would just look at me from across the field with this like bright smile on his face. And it's a moment I will never forget. And I don't know his name. And I've thought about him 50 times a day since we left. And I feel like what the Lord has said is I know his name and I have got him. And so I just pray for him. I'm like, and every time I think of him, I pray, Lord, I don't know his name, but you do, and you have got him. I pray for God to grow him into a man of God that leads his people in this tribe to know the Lord more. I mean, just these prayers that, just those moments like that are the life-changing moments that were heart-wrenching. My kids will never not have a sweatshirt. My kids will always be fine. But to see it firsthand was, it impacted me in an unbelievable way.
Mm, yeah, it was so powerful. And I cried 1 million times that day and
Mhm.
pretty much every day since. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was so, yeah, so incredible.
Mhm.
So, okay, so we went to the home visit, which we cannot tell you every detail of this because it will
Mhm.
take 18 hours to tell you it
Yeah.
all. So the site visit was amazing. We were able to take them a basket of food, which was just like kind of like a pillowcase filled with food is basically what it was. So they
Mhm.
started divvying it up so that we could all help carry it up the hill. And we gave them like bags of rice and it was just incredible. There was like this little mud and grass hut that like the grandmother sleeps in, and it is so primitive. When we
Mhm.
got back to the school, so we were able to spend some time up there, and that was great with the family at the site visit. We get back to the school and it was lunchtime. And it was so awesome because they had these massive pots, massive. I mean, have you ever seen a pot that big?
Mm-mm.
There's 233 kids, I think, right?
Uh-huh.
And 233 kids, and they're feeding all of them. And so they have these huge pots full of rice and meat. And I think it was goat meat. I'm pretty sure because that's very common there. Not as common here. We tried it. It's just not as common here. But it was great. But it was so cool because we got to serve the kids and we got to serve them and like scoop out a big bowl of food and put it on their plate. And it was hot,
Mhm.
filling. It had nutrients. Like I do not know what kind of meal they get Monday through Friday. But on Saturdays, when they're at this compassion center, they get a
Mhm.
good meal. And they ate every single child that I saw. I don't know if you saw anybody, but every single child I saw ate every single bite of food. And it
Mhm.
was a big plate of food that
When
we
I
give
was worried
rice.
when we were handing it out, I was worried. I was like, "Are we gonna run out of food? Is there enough food?" And he looked at me and he said, "We have plenty of food." He said,
Mhm.
"We give them as much food as we can. This is probably their only meal for the day." And I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh my
Mm.
gosh!" Like even that was so overwhelming. And they did. They ate every single grain of rice. There
Yep.
was nothing left.
Every bite of food off that plate. And so I was so struck by because you were talking a second ago just about the compassion centers. So they are Christ centered, they're church driven, and it makes me cry, but they're child focused. And I think because I have young kids, it impacted me so deeply because these kids are my kids' ages. And what I think I love about this organization the most is that they are not trying to dilute their resources and try to help everybody. They're trying to make they're trying to make a difference in the life of a child. And so it is just so incredible to see these children that I don't know if you have a child, sometimes you do things for your kids and you have to think to yourself, they are not going to appreciate this right now. They don't even realize what we are doing for them now, but later they're going to appreciate it. I think that these kids in Tanzania appreciate it way more than my children, or the children here in America, for instance, just because there's so much abundance here. But what was so amazing was getting to talk to the alumni, and we'll go into that in just a minute, but the alumni and talk to them about the difference that was made in their life by compassion entering their lives when they were children. And so,
Well, and one thing that I don't think I know, I didn't know, and maybe you did, but I don't think so. The home visit that we did it was the home of one of the children that was sponsored. And so
mhm.
it can only be one child per family that is sponsored. And at first I was like, wait, there's 6 kids. Like I want to sponsor all of them. What I didn't know is that the entire family is affected by one child being sponsored. We took enough food up. We took enough rice for 1 month when we went up to this family to see it. So yes, you're only sponsoring one child per family, but the whole well-being of the family is seen, and Compassion is doing as much as they can to help these people. And I didn't know that. I didn't know. The other thing that we saw when we were at this site after we got done with the home visit, every single child that is sponsored has a binder. And it was so crazy when you realize it. They had us look up, and there was this shelf at the top of the room, and it's all these binders that are up there. And it's the whole well-being of the child. It's the craziest thing. So they get at minimum one health screening a year, a physical, to make sure they're okay. There's a whole mental exam that takes place to make sure mentally their well-being is done. If these kids aren't showing up on these Saturdays at this Compassion day, they're gone, and welfare checks are done to go make sure that the kids are okay. I just didn't know how comprehensive the care was for these kids that are sponsored.
And I think we've all seen ads on TV for things like, you should donate to this cause. You should donate to this cause. And I am ashamed to say that I think that there's a little bit of a skeptical side of me that is always like my initial reaction is always, I have no idea if that money is actually going to that cause. Like I could be sending that money and literally it could be funding somebody's yacht in Miami. Like I don't know. I don't know where it's going. And so I think that what I loved so much was seeing that all of the dollars, which for sponsoring one child, which is sponsoring an entire family, it's $43 a month. 43. That's it. $43 a month. Are you kidding me? And so for me to see that all of those $43 are actually being utilized and spent on the children. There's no wasted money. We got to go to the Compassion office, the actual national office for Tanzania. They walked us through their process, how they send letters to the kids. Like we got to see every single thing and how it works. They have very little overhead because they truly give every penny that they can of our money that we're sending to support these children. So it kind of like is making so much more sense to me even now as I'm processing, like just that we got to see how exactly this is helping the children and the families. I mean, it's so profound. So, okay, we have to go to day 2.
Well, and I know, like,
Oh,
yes, we're jumping ahead a little bit. We went to church, but I think that one of the most impactful things for me was the kids was when you got to meet Yese.
oh
And
yeah.
so that too, it's
So
like
this was day 2. So we're gonna this okay.
seeing the
We just
binders,
yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. Because day
seeing
2.
the binders and
Yeah.
seeing all that was amazing. And I don't know, it was very eye-opening. Something about the next day when we got to go meet the child that Rachel and her family sponsors. It really just brought it all home for me, and it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable just that we got to see exactly who your dollars are going to.
Right. No, it humanized it. It actually
100%.
humanized it and it made it like real. And
Mhm.
I remember I got the phone call telling from our friend Lori, and she said, we've arranged for you to meet the little boy that you sponsor in Tanzania. And we were in the car and my boys were in the car. And of course, shocker, I burst into tears and was like, Lori, you're kidding me. Oh my gosh. But my boys got to hear that and they got to like, so then I hang up with Lori and they were like, Mom, because Lori said, if you want, you can put together a backpack full of goodies and stuff for Yese. And so we got home and I mean, they wasted no time. They got their favorite backpack that both of them have used at school, right? Like different years. And they got their favorite, it's a Michael Jordan, Air Jordan backpack, and they just love it. And they started filling it with all the things. And Landon has a cross necklace that he wanted for a really, really long time. And he took that cross necklace off and handed it to me and said, I want you to give this to Yesay. And I mean, just to see the impact on my own children and for them to put this together for Yesay and think outside of themselves and think about something greater than themselves. Like it was so incredible. So getting to meet him and getting to transport myself and these things from Fort Worth, Texas, all the way to Tanzania and getting to meet him and his mom. And I looked it up, and his mom is 1 year younger than me. And I mean, they live a hard life. Like they live such a hard life. So we're, let's just say for all intents and purposes, we're the same age, and getting to meet that little boy. She has a 6-year-old. I have a 6-year-old, and getting to look in her eyes and watch her. And I have these pictures of her smiling so big, watching him unpack the different things that we put in the backpack for him. I mean, that just warmed my heart because I know she has 6 other children. And I know that the money that we're sending is not just for Yesay, but it's for all of them. And we got to spend the whole day with them and just hours, not the whole day, but we got to spend hours and hours. We got to, feed them lunch and just sit with them. And Yesay was like playing with the markers and the colors that we gave him. And he drew a picture for my kids that I was able to bring home for them. And just to bridge the gap between these two worlds for a moment was so incredible. And I was able to like send pictures home to my kids. Like when we got back to the hotel and had Wi-Fi, I was able to send photos home and like let my boys see Yesay, who his picture has been hanging in our kitchen on our bulletin board forever now. And to be able to like see me like hugging him and holding him was so unbelievable. And so the other day, oh my gosh, it was so sweet. This summer, we're teaching the boys about saving, tithing, and spending, right? And so they get a small allowance every week. And so they take 10% for tithing and then 10% for saving. And so they've collected some money in their give portion this summer. And so I said, hey guys, I think we should take this, and I think we need to do it. And here are some different options. We can find somebody to give this to. We can give it to the church. We can send it to Yesay. And both of them unanimously said, we want to send this to Yesay. And so they gave me their cash, and I was able to go online and give $20 because they each gave me $10 to give to Yesay. And I was able to just, give $20 to him and his family. And for me to like actually know what they look like and where that's going. Another thing that we were able to do is we were able to say, what's your biggest need? Like, how can we pray for you? What is your biggest need? And his mom, it's just unbelievable. But she said, we would love a bed to sleep in. We sleep on the floor. And the translator, which we got to know really well, he was so wonderful. He was like, yeah, right now they sleep on like a grass mat on the ground. And I was like, the whole family? And he said, yes, they're so grateful for their shelter, but they're sleeping on the ground. And let me just tell you, I'm 43 years old, and with my 43-year-old bones, nothing about me wants to sleep on the ground. And she's the same age, but she's had many more children than me. And there is no way, like, I don't know how she does it. And so Derek and I were able to go online and make a specific donation to Yesay's family to just provide a bed for them. And it wasn't crazy expensive because everything over there is so much less than it is here. And so we were able to just send that money and provide a bed. And all they wanted was one. So because we said, how many do they want? How many? Tell us how many they want. And they said one. just this is what they need, and this is the dollar amount. And so we were able to just do that right away. And to be the humanizing of this organization, I think is the biggest impact for me, is just seeing, touching, feeling, experiencing what is actually happening on the other side of the world that I have very conveniently shut myself off to for all of my life before this. I didn't know, and I didn't go out of my way to know what was going on in Africa, and I think that sometimes we just don't know where to start or what to do. And this is such an easy place to start to make a massive difference in somebody's life. So,
well, and I felt like it was so perfect that we went from meeting Yesay and meeting, there were several people that got to meet the kids that they sponsor. We go back to the hotel and we get to have dinner with Benson, who is so amazing,
yes.
who had graduated from the Compassion program. And so we get to see, this 6-year-old little boy that Rachel is sponsoring. We get to see, how her dollars are affecting him and his family. And then we get to go and see the long-term effect that Compassion has on these kids. And Benson is a grown man now, and he is an attorney with a law firm with a partner, and just his success story was amazing. But he started being sponsored when he was 11 or 12, is what he said. And he said that over the course of his time being sponsored by Compassion, he had 3 different sponsors. And he said that their letters to him were such a lifeline and so life-changing for him. And I have been literally the worst sponsor ever. I had no idea that my letters to these kids could be so impactful. And so he started talking about how he really didn't hear "I love you," and it just wasn't spoken in his culture very much. And there's just so much conflict among parents and just the people around him because the poverty is so bad. And there's always just this desperation and this need, and there's always this conflict. And so he said that he would consistently hear "I love you" from his sponsors, and just how life-changing that was for him. He, same thing. It was like he was given a meal on Saturdays and just all the things that we've already talked about. And then he said that his last sponsor would ask him, "What do you want to do with your life? What is your dream? What do you want next?" And she consistently followed up with him about it. And his dad had been arrested and put in jail wrongfully. He was arrested for something that he didn't do and put in this labor prison. And Vincent said that he knew in that moment he wanted to be an attorney. So when his sponsor asked him, he said, "I want to be an attorney. I want to be a lawyer. That's what I want to do. I want to fight for people." And she followed up with him and continued to encourage him. And he did it. He was part of a program through Compassion that no longer exists, which is so sad, but they put him through college. And he is now an attorney, and he's able to fight for people. And I don't know, it was just such a full circle 48 hours. So we go to this first site visit, we see these kids. The next day we get to meet Yesay, Rachel's kid, and then we get to see somebody who's been through the whole program and is a success story from the program. And it was a sponsor is giving $43 a month and just consistently keeping up with him. He never met any of his sponsors. None of his sponsors went to go see him. It was just following the Compassion program. And his life was completely changed by it. It was overwhelming for me.
It was absolutely incredible. And again, going back to it breaks the cycle of poverty. And I just did not know, because if Benson had not had Linda from Hawaii writing him, he said the first time he heard "I love you" was from Linda in Hawaii. And it's just not something culturally that they dole out. I tell my children 8 billion times a day, they feel smothered by me. They're like, "Okay, we get it. You love us. Stop. Stop kissing me," and that is not, and it's because we have abundance. We have the luxury of being able to do that. I mean, it's just incredible. But he was able to break the cycle of poverty because of Compassion. Because Compassion was able to fund a life for him and allow him to pursue his dreams. And he fought for it. I mean, he wrote a letter. Remember how hard he fought to get that last position that Compassion put him through college. It was the last position that was ever funded, because they they've just stopped that particular fund. But it's like, he was the last person and he fought hard for that. And it is now, they have 3 children, and he and his wife, and we were able to meet her. She's just amazing. And those 3 children now are growing up where he would have been continuing in poverty. So his children would have continued in poverty. Now he is providing a life for them that they would have never had otherwise. And it's because compassion and Linda in Hawaii and his other 2 sponsors were willing to sacrifice like such a small amount. It makes such a huge difference in somebody's life forever. Oh, it's just incredible.
And compassion is in 29 countries. I also didn't know that.
Yeah, I did not either.
And I think for me, the sticking point there is that this kind of poverty exists all over the world. And, you know, I can go to different parts of Austin and maybe see some poverty. It's still nothing like the poverty that we saw in Africa. But just that they have been so intentional about these 29 countries that they have gone into. I can't remember where they were now. I can't remember what country it was that they came to them finally and they said, you know what? We don't need you anymore, because Compassion had set up this amazing program and helped with all these different cities in this country. And these churches were able to take over. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to grow these countries into self-sufficient, you know, countries to help the poverty and to help the people in these countries. And so I don't know, it was a very eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah.
Life-changing. I'm forever changed.
Yeah. Like, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish, and he'll eat for a lifetime. And that's what they're equipping these countries and these regions to do, is like truly to be autonomous and to grow and develop on their own enough where they don't need compassion anymore. And then compassion can go somewhere else and help somebody else. Like, it is just, I just had no idea. I just did not know until we got there and we learned all this stuff, you know. It was incredible. So, man, it was the final day. We just don't even have the time to go into all of it, but the final day was the national office of Tanzania. No.
Yes. And then that's right. Yeah. And then we went to that survival program, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the day?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the survival program, where they have this amazing program where they help pregnant moms and babies up to 1 year old, I think. And so we got to see all of these mamas, and they did this like crazy dance for us, like awesome, with these huge collars on. And it was so cool. Like, I have so many videos that are just so great. And then they teach them how to work. And we got to go to this one woman's house, and you tell the story so well, but tell that real quick before we finish.
Yeah. So she has been sponsored through Compassion. And so we got to go to her house and do a home visit. And once again, we're using that term very loosely because it is a structure. And it was so small. I mean, I look at areas of my house and I'm like, well, this home that we went to was so small. And there was 6 of them that were living there because they had 3 children, and then they were helping take care of another child. And so there's 6 of them that sleep. And the house was divided into two areas. And it was the tiniest little sitting room is what they called it, and then a bedroom. And it was just, I mean, there was a few of us crammed in this tiny space. And I'm like, I don't know that the room is wide enough to lay down, but somehow 6 people are living in this tiny structure. The woman who was there, she was so precious, and we're standing in this like sitting room, and we kind of did the same thing that we did with Yesse's mom. And we said, how can we pray for you? And the first thing that she said was, if you could pray for the spiritual life of my 3 girls. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I think sitting in this poverty and sitting in this, I mean, it was so sweet because you could tell it was like spotless, this area we were in, this, you know, this sitting room, but it was a dirt floor. I mean, it was a dirt floor where we were sitting. And the first thing that she prays for is for the spiritual lives of her children. And it was such an incredible moment. After some digging and things like that, we said, okay, tell us something tangibly, like what can we pray for? And she just said, you know, it would be amazing. We're so grateful for this space that we have. It would be so amazing if we could add on and make it a little bit bigger. She has a little tiny plot of land where she grows produce and sells produce at a produce stand. That is her job. The most impactful thing in that moment for me was that they have no running water. So she has to go, either she has to go to a little bit closer neighbor down the road and pay for the water that she's able to get because they have a well, or she has to go, I think she said, was it a half a mile that they have to go get their water. So not only just to exist and take care of her family, she has to go get water. She also has to go get enough water to water the produce that she's growing in order to support her family. I mean, all of it for me, I'm just sitting there looking at this tiny little woman with these three babies, and just the effort that it takes just to survive was just mind blowing for me.
But the joy
The joy.
that so many of these people have. And I just remember coming home and I wrote on the plane, I was just like kind of processing, the 36-hour flight home. I
Yeah.
had a
Mhm.
bit of time to process. And so I was processing and I said that struggle is not always bad. We are providing for, like, say, for instance, we're providing a better life. There is still struggle there. But here, like, they have so much joy even in the midst of their struggling. And it is so, so amazing. And then here we have so much abundance and such a lack of joy. There's such a lack of joy. So it's like it was just so compelling for me to like see it firsthand, to see
Mhm.
all of this. So
Well, and it
uh,
was hard to leave the country, to be perfectly honest. Rachel and I both talked about that. I mean, I cried on the plane because you have this like longing to stay with these people in this country that you have fallen in love with. You miss your family and you want to go home, but it was so hard to leave the country. And I think there's part of me, it's like there's so much that I know I can do. And that I just wanted to stay and do it. And give away every penny and give away every item of clothing. We left so much. We left as much as we could with the people there. And I don't know, it was so hard to come home. As much as you wanted to come home to your comfort, to your family, to those things, it was really, really hard to come home.
yeah, I felt a deep sadness
Mm-hmm.
leaving there. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to come see my children and my husband. I love them so much, but I felt so sad to
Mm-hmm.
leave what we experienced. And I also think it's because I experienced a closer connection to the Lord there
Mm-hmm.
than maybe anything I've ever done in my whole life. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that connection, I was so afraid because when you have every creature comfort at your fingertips, God seems farther away.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're relying on him, he seems a lot closer. And so
Mm-hmm.
we really needed to rely on him during this trip. And I felt so close to him. And I didn't want that. I wanted to go back to that. So anyway, it was just amazing. So okay, let me tell you really quick. If you want to sponsor a child, it's $43 a month. It is the easiest thing to do ever. They will just automatically draft it out of your account every month. You don't even see it. You don't even miss it. That $43, I don't even miss it. I don't even see it. It's just gone. But you can sign up for a child. Oh, and also you can choose anywhere. You can choose any of the 29 countries. You can choose a birthday that speaks to you. You can choose a country that speaks to you. You can choose the gender. Like you get to choose. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that we forgot, just this story very, very briefly, that we like every country has a need of all these 29 countries. When the area that we were in that first day, one of the stories that they told us that I didn't understand, um, they said that a lot of times in these Maasai tribes, there's such a desperate need because for money just to survive, that a lot of times 8, 9, 10-year-old little girls will be sold into marriage so that the family can get money to survive. When they are part of the compassion program, they are protected and they will not be sold. Being part of this compassion program protects them and their well-being is taken care of and they're checked on. the young boys that are there, the same age, 8, 9, 10-year-old boys, they are trained how to steal starting at a really young age. And if they're part of the compassion program, they're protected from that. That was another thing that really floored me, that my $43 a month could be protecting an 8, 9, 10-year-old little girl. I have a 10-year-old little girl from being sold into marriage. So
Yeah.
I know we're done telling stories, but that one for me was
Oh,
just
that
like,
one, I know. I was actually just about to go back to that. So no, I'm
mhm.
so glad you did. We will put the link. I'll put the link in the show notes so that you can see and you can easily click on it and see how very simple it is to do. And I would encourage you to do it with your family. I would encourage you to Yesay has become part of our family. Like he's become part of our conversations. He has become a huge part of our family. And it is such a blessing for us on this side. And I know that it's a blessing for them on their side. And so it is so impactful. But if you want your kids to just experience something outside of themselves, what a better way to do it. Have them, involve them in this process, have them. It's so easy to write letters. It is so simple to do it. DM me, email me, call me, whatever, if you have any questions on how to do it, because Rebekah and I are so passionate about this because we got to see firsthand what a huge difference it makes. It makes such a big difference. So anyway, okay. Well, thank you so much for giving me all of your thoughts and everything. I know it's so therapeutic for me just to like talk through it because I love it so much. I just want to talk about it all the time. So anyway, I love you.
I love you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye.